Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, when I invited you to my presentation, I promised you a present. This is the present. It's a piece of gold. It's American Eagle coin made in bronze and 24 karat gold, and it's worth today $1,280 in payment to Salt partners who would like to collect his present. They are laid out there. If they are not enough, we have more. So, Salt partners built hydrosol salt purification plants. We have been doing it now since some 40 years, and we have built about 35 of them, among other things. When people come to us and ask us and are interested in this technology, they usually ask, well, I have salt with this much calcium, this much magnesium. What can your technology do with that salt? What can you say that will be the purity of the purified salt? And we have to say, we don't know. It's surprising, isn't it? Now let me explain why. Way back in 1979, when I was working for Krebs Swiss, we built caustic chlorine plants. We built a plant in Egypt, and we have integrated, because the Egyptian quality of salt was known to be rather poor, we have integrated a salt washing plant. We bought that plant, or Krebs bought that plant, from the famous company Saint-Domingue. And when I joined the company, the plant was just going in operation, and I was given the job to monitor and evaluate the performance of that plant. Now, the view was, of course, that we would do more of such business, and if we promise our clients some results, well, then we should know the correlations. We should know what can we expect. So this was the first week of the data we were obtaining from Egypt. And it looked fantastic. You know, you have more or less a line, so we have made a correlation, and we have produced this graph. This graph is a generalized prediction. If you have so and so much calcium or magnesium in the raw salt, then this is the reduction that you can expect. A couple of weeks later, our data collection looked like this, and another few weeks later it looked like this. I mean, this data set is quite similar to the data set that is being discussed one floor below, when the influence of salt on high blood pressure is being predicted or argued. So anyhow, we have seen that this makes no sense, and we had to realize that we have to look at impurities in salt from an entirely new and much more scientific way. We had to understand the nature of the impurities. We had to understand the phase equilibria. We had to understand the structure of the crystals. We had to know what the salt and brine contact time needs to be. And we had to determine the unit operations that are suitable for salt purification. So we had to learn the basics. So the first thing was to take a look, what is the nature of impurities? Well, it's the same, are the same impurities that we know are in the seawater, and this is mainly calcium sulfate, magnesium chloride, calcium chloride in some, not in the seawater, but in some lakes, for example, in Dead Sea, sodium sulfate, cases we have learned just a few minutes ago, potassium chloride, sodium bromide, and so on. Now, the the phase equilibria diagram that we have used for seawater, or investigation of those phase equilibria, was this one. This is an old Alpenreith and Brown diagram. It has proven quite useful for our purpose. Now, what is the nature of the salt crystals? When you want to understand what is inside the salt crystal, you have to break it, you have to take a look at it, and it's the picture on the left-hand side. You can see some of the layers of the salt, the 90°, and so on. But you don't really see what is in between. Now, if you use a reflective light at a strong angle with the same piece of salt, it reveals the cavities and crevices. And this is extremely important because the salt crystals, they grow in concentrated brine, and the concentrated brine contains concentrated impurities, and all these cavities and crevices are full of that very impure mother liquor, the brine. So that's important to know, to understand that the salt is not a monocrystal, it's a living creature. Then what was also important was to see the impurities, because what you don't see, you don't believe. So we have borrowed a mineralogical microscope from the University of Zurich and have taken some samples and looked at it. These three pictures is the same slide, is the same glass, same sample. In the left-hand side in normal light, on the right-hand side in fully polarized light, you only see the impurities, but you don't see the salt. And this microscope had the advantage of shifting the polarized light, and this is the picture on the right-hand side. The background is magenta, you see as black and white, you see the salt crystals, and what is colored are the crystals of impurities. Mainly, as we found out later, calcium sulfate gypsum, astracanid, and bitter salt. The pictures were beautiful. I mean, I was absolutely thrilled. You know, I was turning this computer, this microscope around, and the crystals were changing from orange to turquoise and back again. Later on, we have determined that what we saw on the left-hand side was the astracanid, and on the right-hand side, the big ones is the bitter salt, and on the right-hand side, the double crystal, the needle orange and turquoise is gypsum. We were looking also at some other things. We were looking at what happens with a crystal that has this embedded gypsum crystal. What happens with it if we break the crystal? And we found that the crystals break where the impurities are embedded. But what was even more important was to see, that's the picture on the right-hand side, that the gypsum crystals bond with the sodium chloride is very weak, and that actually the gypsum crystals fall out from the broken sodium chloride. We also learned what was good and what was bad. On the left-hand side you see the result of elutriation, that is a slow and regular upflow of the purification brine, which picks up the gypsum with it and some very small particles of salt. And we have also seen on the right-hand side of what happens if you wash the salt. Some people think, well, if we have to more wash, we have to put more water. And we were even told that by some very, very reputable people, reputed people, and reputed companies. And we thought, well, okay, let's try it. If we wash more, what happens? And if you really wash everything, then what is left is on the right-hand side, is only gypsum and insolubles. The sodium chloride is gone, is dissolved. Identification of impurities, we had to know what is what, how does it look like. We have synthesized them, we have crystallized them, we have crystallized the gypsum, crystallized the astracanite, and crystallized the bitter salt, so that we knew what we are looking at. This is the raw salt on the left-hand side, picture similar to the one that you have already seen, and picture of a salt that is very highly purified with very pure saturated sodium chloride brine. Why saturated? Because we don't want to dissolve the salt. And the saturated pure sodium chloride will displace the impurities, will dissolve them, and the impurities will displace sodium chloride from the brine, so that we are not actually washing, we are actually crystallizing, not much, but at least on the surface. However, we could purify it, and you can still see some impurities on this purified salt on the right-hand side. However, this is not enough to determine how the process will operate. We had to do some more. We had to find out how to measure this limit of what can be removed from the salt. We call it upgradeability. And we had to measure the upgradeability without any change of crystal size, no crushing for electrolytical brine, 3 and 1.5 millimeters, milling for table salt production, 0.8, 0.4 millimeters, flotation for rock salt, and some other process options. We have found out that it is quite easy to crush the salt to 3 millimeters. We have done it with a simple equipment like this, and we have also introduced this purification upgradeability apparatus, and we have determined that at least 15 minutes of contact time is required to get all these impurities out from the crevices in the salt into the brine. After 15 minutes, the purification process actually does not produce more results. Now, the evaluation of the upgradeability tests. Raw salt and test purified salt are analyzed, impurities are calculated, calcium is calcium sulfate, balance of sulfate is magnesium sulfate, balance of magnesium is magnesium chloride, salts and insolubles are deducted from 100%. We are saying for this simple method we do not need to look at bromide and potassium. The results are shown as upgradeability curves. Results serves selection of the most economic process. The selection of the most economic process for the caustic chlorine industry is quite similar. You calculate the consumption of brine purification chemicals, the cost of disposal of the sludges, and so on and so on, and you make a comparison. You make a curve, and you choose the one that is most economic. And results from basis for plant performance guarantees. We have to guarantee, so that's the basis for the guarantee. This is how such upgradeability curve looks like. On the right bottom corner, we have the raw salt. On the top right corner, we have the amount of impurities that remain in the salt after long, at least 15 minutes purification with pure brine, and then to the left 3 millimeters, 1.5 millimeters, and so on. Evaluation of the salt purification process performance. We guarantee 90%. Usually our clients run with 95 to 99%. Raw salt, product salt, and test purified salt are analyzed, mass balance is calculated, purification efficiency is calculated, plant performance guarantees are verified, and plant's performance is optimized. These are the steps that we follow during commissioning of the plants. This is the definition of the plant efficiency calculation. It's a ratio between removed against removable. The results that are obtainable, very high purity of salt. This is comparison of the hydrosol salts against Swiss vacuum salt, which is very pure. But even some other vacuum salts, we can see that they have a substantial amounts of impurities, sometimes much more than well-purified solar salt. This is the salt A. You can see that sulfate is being marketed. Salt is marketed with 118 ppm, but actually 29 is achievable. This is another one, similar results. Another one, much higher figures, and as a result of that, of all these collection of results, we have this collection of calcium upgradeability. You can see that it's just all kinds of data. You can see here for magnesium, here for sulfate, and here for insolubles. You can see that even more, that the salt can come out with even more insolubles than it comes in. Conclusion: salt purification effect or process results are not predictable. The salt has to be tested. We guarantee 90% purification efficiency. We have built plants like this, 100 tons per hour. We have built plants like this, 40 tons per hour, producing the purest salt in Europe with around 50 ppm of sulfate. And the question is now, why not turn your salt into gold? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention.
Sorry, and I just want to say what a privilege it is to work with people in the salt industry and related industries. In my long career, I've worked with many industries, and I don't know how we gathered so many nice people all in one field, but we managed to do it.
Water, and then you have the cold one, the one that you and get out quickly.
You need to get the contrast there.
We're talking about here, Vladimir.